in service, and He is yoked to us. So whatever God allows us to experience, it is made for our needs and for our abilities exactly. As we would say, walang labis, walang kulang. It's exactly. Now, the things that we experience, the challenges, the trials, 1 Corinthians 10:13 tells us that no temptation has overtaken you except as such is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able. But with the temptation will also make the way of escape, that you may be able to bear it. So when we are yoked with Jesus, we have the absolute assurance that He will strengthen us to bear any temptation, trial, or tribulation that confronts us. And in the invitation, the rest that Jesus gives us is the assurance that He is by our side to enable us to thrive in every one of life's challenges. When we submit to His yoke and accept the task that Jesus gives us, it is not only, for our good, for our salvation, but also for us to bless those around us. The Teacher's Edition gives this powerful quotation. I took a portion of it, and it says, "By this illustration, Christ teaches that we are called to service as long as life shall last. We are to take upon His yoke that we may be co-workers with Him. If we were left to follow our own inclinations, to go just where our will would lead us, we should fall into Satan's ranks and become possessors of his attributes. Therefore, God confines us to His will, which is high, noble, and elevating. He desires that we shall patiently and wisely take up the duties of service." When Pastor and we were talking about this earlier, he said, you need to emphasize that service to God has no expiration date and no retirement. As Ellen White says, we are called to service as long as life shall last. So, hang on, let's serve, because those who commit themselves will get the prize of eternal life. We are not working for our salvation. But remember, when we are yoked with Christ, we are co-workers, we are partners with Him. And this is a beautiful picture, right? We see this one pretty ordinarily. Now, Jesus was having the agricultural picture in His mind when He was saying this. And most of us grew up in this kind of life as well, farming and, my grandfather is a farmer too. So, every summer, I see this task, and it's not easy, but it's a beautiful picture for me. Why? It's because from the fruit of the soil comes food for my stomach and our sustenance. So if we are going to think about this in our spiritual life, nothing happens if we are not going to be co-laborers with Christ. But this is the essence of our existence. In our lesson, we also find the words in Galatians 6:2. Bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. If we step back a verse, in verse 1, it says, the meaning for that one is for burden carrying or burden bearing is to restore someone who has gone off track, to help him and to help restore that person see divine grace. And so the essence of service is for us to help another person. We all carry burdens, and so we need another person to help us carry burdens. And in the picture of church, we see this one pretty well. Burden bearing is a divinely ordained church activity, and for us, it helps us to develop gentleness and compassion. Can you imagine? If nobody here experiences a problem, how are we going to learn to be compassionate? How are we going to learn to be gentle? How are we going to learn to be kind? So we never know. God may allow us to experience certain things, if only to reach and teach somebody else how to minister to us, right? And we all need these things, especially as we travel to the heavenly kingdom. The the verse tells us that we are not carrying God's yoke. We are yoked to Him. And He says that His yoke is easy and His burden is light. And our lesson reminds us that easy means good, pleasant, useful, benevolent. And so it's in these things, if we consider the yoke as easy, it means it's going to be good for us. For all of us here who are parents, we've seen our kids take that first step. And I wish, because we know that if they step, they're going to fall. And how I wish, I can just hold their hands. But in the metaphor of life, we can't hold our kids' hands forever. Sooner or later, they're going to, go and leave the nest. I'm feeling that one very, very well at this time. My baby is going to go away. And I can't, I feel like I'm sending a kid to college for the first time. I'm like, okay, believe it or not, I attended the dorm orientation that was supposed to be for her because she's not available. So I signed in her name, and I participated in the orientation for her. I took notes so I can give it to her. Not being obsessed, but I just want her to have the best experience possible, and that's what we are as parents, to hold their hands. I mean, if we cannot let go, then we're going, but, this is life, and we can just, the same thing that God is assuring us that He is not going to leave. That's the same thing we do as parents. Because first and foremost, we have Jesus Christ as our example, Walking with Jesus is not easy, but He promised to never leave us nor forsake us. It is through obedience by faith and understanding that our salvation is secure and not based on the law, but on Christ's righteousness covering us, that we can have true rest and freedom. I was talking with, recently, I had the experience of talking with somebody. I mean, she's not 62 anymore. But she was sharing, she said, people are, thinking about retirement. Do I have enough? What am I going to do if I don't have enough? But she told me that she retired at 62. She said, I'm only getting 70 to 75% of my pension. But I have rest, that God knows. Now, this person is a giver. She gives benevolently, she gives generously, and I see how God has been blessing her. So for me, the takeaway is, if you save, you're doing something. How long that will last, it's up to God, as long as I'm faithful to Him. So we have come to Jesus, we have yoked with Jesus, and we have learned